So now we're going to deal with luxury arts. These are items such as metalwork, glasswork, wood, ivory, carpets, textiles, etc. In the West, we would refer to this as crafts, because we tend to separate what we see as fine art from crafts. In non-Western societies, we often don't see it as crafts because the traditional breakdowns don't exist. In the Islamic world, just because you're a metal worker or you're a textile worker does not mean you're less of an artist. So, for that reason, we refer to these as luxury arts. These are often highly decorated items with ornate surfaces. And furniture is particularly rare, and this brings us to a central point when it comes to luxury arts in Islam, which is the tradition in early Islam and pre-Islamic tradition is, of course, a nomadic society, which means you need to be able to carry everything you own. So, if you're going to own something, rather than carrying around, say, a painting that serves no purpose, you're going to take something that does serve a purpose, and you're going to beautify it. You're going to add an aesthetic to it. And here we're going to focus on metalwork. And Islam is known for both precious and common metalwork. Precious metalwork, meaning working with gold and silver, but common metalwork is working with brass, bronze, iron, more standard, less expensive materials. So, the piece we're actually focusing on is called the ewer in the form of a bird. Now, a ewer is basically a water pitcher. And this is cast brass. So, in other words, they're going to make a series of molds, they're going to cast them, and then they're going to braze them together. So, for example, the head might be in two halves down to this band, and then it splits, and we see a couple of halves for the body, and the legs are separate, and then those are all fused together with heat. This piece is also signed and dated 796, so it's a very, very old piece. It's about 15 inches tall, so it's about the size of a 1-gallon pitcher that you would find, say, at Walmart. Now, a couple of interesting things. We see incised lines which suggest, feathers down in here. But then we have a medallion in the chest. We have this band with writing around the neck. We have other ornamentation. Those are there to break up the surface. Otherwise, this becomes a massive field of these feather forms, and it becomes kind of dull to look at. So to add to the aesthetic, to the beauty of the piece, they add these additional elements. So those are additions for artistic sake. We also see similar surface detail in other luxury arts. And this gives us a sense of very flexible design and the desire to make a functional item decorative. Again, if you're nomadic, you can't really carry around a sculpture, but you can turn something that you need to carry, such as a water pitcher, into a sculpture. There's a couple other interesting sort of engineering elements here. So what is this? I mean, after all, it's not really a canteen. So what a ewer, or at least in this case, what it's meant for is you could put a chain through this hook in the top, and that would run up, and then you could lower it down a well and fill it with water, and then bring it back up. Interesting bit of engineering. If you've ever tried pouring an average glass into a bowl or another container, you'll get it sort of spilling over. It runs down the base, and of course we're in the desert, so you don't want to waste anything. So in this case, there's actually a bead right here. It's a tiny little bead at the end of the beak. So as water comes out of the mouth, it'll hit that bead, and then from that bead, it'll drop straight down in whatever direction the bird is facing. So if it's tipped, it will have a perfect stream into whatever vessel you have. And this sort of engineering, this sort of thought process really goes with the art. If I'm going to put in this much time to make a beautiful ornamental piece, I also want it to work perfectly. And keep in mind, they have a lot less stuff, so the stuff that they have is that much more important. So they're going to put in that extra time. And this is just one example of the metalwork that we tend to see coming out of Islam.